The rain fell like a punishment from the sky, heavy and relentless, soaking through Anna Mitchell's thin cardigan in seconds. She stood on the front steps of what had been her home for 3 years, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her trembling hands. The marriage certificate, the document that had once represented hope, love, and a future she had desperately wanted to believe in. Now it was nothing more than a lie printed on expensive paper. Behind her, the door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through her bones. She heard the lock click into place, and something inside her shattered completely. 3 years. 3 years of trying to be the perfect wife, of cooking meals that went uneaten, of sleeping alone in a bed meant for 2, of making excuses for a husband who was never there. 3 years of loving a man who, she now realized, had never truly let her see who he was. Anna looked down at the certificate, watching the rain blur the ink, smearing their names, together in a cruel mockery of the union they had supposedly formed. Daniel Mitchell. The name meant nothing to her anymore. She had married a stranger, a ghost who came and went at odd hours, who took mysterious phone calls in locked rooms, who kissed her forehead with lips that felt increasingly cold. Her fingers tightened on the paper. The anger rose in her chest like a wave, hot and consuming, temporarily overpowering the shock and the hurt. With a cry that was swallowed by the thunder, she tore the certificate in half. Then again, and again. The pieces fluttered from her hands like wounded birds, carried away by the wind and the rain, disappearing into the darkness of the Chicago night. She had caught him, not with another woman, as she had sometimes feared during those long, lonely nights. No, what she had discovered was far more disturbing. Files on his computer left carelessly open while he took a call in another room. Names she did not recognize, amounts of money that made her head spin. References to things that sounded like they belonged in a crime novel, not in her husband's home office. When she had confronted him, his face had changed. The man she thought she knew, the quiet businessman with the gentle smile, had vanished. In his place stood someone harder, colder, with eyes that held secrets darker than any shadow. He had told her to forget what she had seen. She had refused. She had demanded answers, explanations, the truth that he had been hiding from her, for their entire marriage, and so he had told her to leave, just like that. 3 years erased in a single sentence. Pack your things and go. His voice had been calm, almost clinical, as if he were discussing a business transaction rather than ending a marriage. She had stood there, frozen, unable to process what was happening. This could not be real. This could not be her life unraveling before her eyes. But it was real. And now she was standing in the rain, with nothing but the clothes on her, back and a heart that felt like it had been ripped from her chest. Anna began to walk. She did not know where she was going. She had no family in Chicago, no close friends she could call at this hour. Her parents were gone, victims of a car accident 5 years ago. Her sister lived in Seattle, and they had grown apart over the years. She was alone, completely and utterly alone, in a city that suddenly felt as foreign as another planet. The streets were empty at this hour, the rain keeping everyone indoors. Streetlights cast pools of orange light on the wet pavement, and Anna walked through them like a ghost, barely aware of her surroundings. Her mind kept replaying the images she had seen on that computer screen. The conversations she had overheard when Daniel thought she was asleep. The late-night visitors who spoke in hushed voices and left before dawn. She had been so blind, so desperate to believe in the fairy tale she had constructed, the story of the successful businessman who had swept her off her feet and given her a life of comfort and security. She had ignored the warning signs, the inconsistencies, the moments when something felt off. She had wanted so badly to be loved that she had accepted whatever version of himself he chose to present. The rain began to ease, fading to a gentle drizzle that felt almost like tears against her skin. Anna found herself in a part of the city she did not recognize, surrounded by towering buildings that blocked out what little. Moonlight filtered through the clouds. She was cold, exhausted, and more frightened than she had ever been in her life. She spotted a small diner across the street, its windows glowing with warm yellow light. The sign read, "Rosie's," in faded red letters, and through the glass she could see a handful of patrons hunched over cups of coffee. It looked safe. It looked like a place where she could sit down, gather her thoughts, and figure out what to do next. Anna crossed the street, pushed open the door and stepped inside. A bell chimed overhead, announcing her arrival to the mostly empty room. The smell of coffee and bacon grease wrapped around her like a blanket, and for a moment she just stood there, dripping on the welcome mat, trying to remember how to breathe. A waitress approached her, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Dolores. She took one look at Anna's soaked clothes and pale face and immediately guided her to a booth in the corner, away from the curious glances of the other customers. "Honey, you look like you've been through a storm in more ways than one," Dolores said, her voice gentle with concern. "Let me get you some coffee and a towel." "On the house." Anna nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. She slid into the booth, her wet clothes squeaking against the vinyl seat, and stared at the table without really seeing it. The pieces of her life lay scattered around her like the torn fragments of her marriage certificate, and she had no idea how to put them back together. The coffee arrived steaming and strong, and Anna wrapped her hands around the mug, desperate for any warmth she could find. She took a sip, felt the heat spread through her chest, and finally allowed herself to think about what she had discovered. Daniel was not a businessman, or rather he was, but his business was something far darker than the import-export company he claimed to run. The files she had seen contained references to territories, to operations, to individuals who needed to be handled. There were spreadsheets tracking money that flowed through dozens of shell companies. There were photographs of men she did not recognize, annotated with notes in Daniel's neat handwriting. Her husband was a criminal, and not just any criminal. From what she had pieced together in those few horrifying minutes before he caught her, Daniel Mitchell was someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who operated in a world she had only ever seen in movies and television shows, a world of shadows and secrets and violence. And she had been married to him for 3 years without knowing any of it. Anna felt sick. She pushed the coffee away and pressed her hands against her eyes, trying to stop the tears that threatened to fall. How could she have been so foolish? How could she have shared a bed with a man whose true nature was so completely hidden from her? What else did she not know? What other lies had her entire marriage been built upon? The bell over the door chimed again, and Anna looked up instinctively. A man entered the diner, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was slightly damp from the rain. He wore an expensive coat over what looked like a tailored suit, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being in control. His eyes swept the room in a quick, assessing glance before landing on Anna. She felt a jolt of recognition, though she was certain she had never seen him before. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at the edges of her memory. But before she could place it, he turned away and took a seat at the counter, ordering coffee in a low, quiet voice. Anna forced herself to look away. She had bigger problems than a stranger in a diner. She needed to figure out where she was going to sleep tonight. She needed to decide whether to go to the police with what she knew. She needed to understand why her husband, who had professed to love her, had thrown her out into the storm like she meant nothing. But as she sat there, shivering in her wet clothes, she could not shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she could not even begin to imagine. The rain had washed away everything she thought she knew, and in its place was a vast, terrifying unknown. She did not know it yet, but the man at the counter was watching her. Not obviously, not in a way that would draw attention, but with a careful, measured interest that spoke of more than casual curiosity. He knew exactly who she was. He knew why she was here, alone and frightened, in a diner on the wrong side of Chicago, and he knew things about her husband that would shake the very foundations of her world. Anna Mitchell had torn up her marriage certificate and walked away from her old life. But the story was only beginning, because the man she had married, the man she thought she was escaping, was not who she believed him to be. And the truth, when it finally came to light, would be more shocking than anything she could have imagined. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the streets clean and carrying away the last remnants of the life she had known. And somewhere in the darkness, forces were already in motion, pulling her toward a destiny she never could have predicted. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. If you enjoy stories that reveal the hidden depths of human relationships and the secrets that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life, this is where you belong. Subscribe now so you never miss a chapter. Morning came grey and reluctant, the sun hidden behind a thick layer of clouds that seemed to press down on the city like a weight. Anna had spent the night in a cheap motel on the outskirts of downtown, paying with the emergency cash she always kept in her wallet. The room was small and dated, with wallpaper that peeled at the corners and a mattress that sagged in the middle, but it was dry and warm and far from the house that was no longer her home. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. She had turned it off the night before, afraid that Daniel might try to track her through it, and she was not ready to turn it back on. She did not want to see if he had called, if he had texted, if he had made any attempt to reach her at all. Part of her desperately hoped he had. Another part, the part that was slowly coming to terms with the reality of her situation, hoped he had not. The pieces of the puzzle kept rearranging themselves in her mind, forming patterns she did not want to see. All those business trips that lasted too long, the men who occasionally came to the house, men with hard eyes and careful movements who fell silent whenever she entered the room. The way Daniel always seemed to know things before they happened, as if he had access to information that ordinary people did not. She had married a man who lived in shadows, and she had never even noticed. Anna finally turned on her phone, bracing herself for whatever awaited her. The screen lit up, notifications flooding in. 17 missed calls from Daniel, 32 text messages. She did not read them. She could not bear to see whatever excuses or explanations or threats he might have sent. Instead, she opened her contacts and scrolled until she found the name she was looking for. Rebecca Torres, the only real friend she had made during her years in Chicago. They had met at a coffee shop 3 years ago, bonding over a shared love of mystery novels and a mutual distaste for the pretentious wine bars that seemed to dominate the neighborhood. Rebecca was a journalist, sharp and curious, with a nose for stories that others overlooked. If anyone could help Anna understand what she had stumbled into, it was her. The phone rang twice before Rebecca picked up. "Anna? Oh my God, I've been trying to reach you. Are you okay? Where are you?" "I left him," Anna said, and her voice cracked on the words. "Rebecca, I found something on his computer. I think he's involved in something terrible." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice was careful, measured. "Anna, listen to me. Where are you right now? Are you somewhere safe?" "A motel, the Starlight Inn off Route 41. "Rebecca, what's going on? You sound strange." Another pause, longer this time. "Stay there. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming to get you. There's something I need to tell you, and it has to be in person." The line went dead before Anna could respond. She stared at the phone, her heart beating faster. Rebecca knew something. The tone in her voice, the urgency in her words, spoke of knowledge that went beyond casual concern. What had her friend been hiding from her? The next 2 hours passed in agonizing slowness. Anna paced the small room, unable to sit still, unable to focus on anything except the growing dread in her stomach. She kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see Daniel's car pull into the parking lot, half expecting something worse that she could not even name. When the knock finally came, she nearly jumped out of her skin. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. Rebecca stood outside, alone, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. Anna opened the door and pulled her friend inside, closing it quickly behind her. "Tell me everything," Anna said. "What do you know about Daniel?" Rebecca removed her sunglasses and met Anna's eyes. "I need you to understand something first. I've been investigating your husband for almost 2 years. I should have told you, but I was afraid. Afraid of what he might do if he found out, afraid of putting you in danger. But now that you've left him, now that you know something is wrong, I can't keep this from you anymore." Anna felt the room tilt, slightly. 2 years. You've known for 2 years and you never said anything. I knew he was dangerous. I knew he was connected to things that most people only read about in headlines. But I didn't have proof, Anna. Not the kind of proof that would stick. And I thought as long as you were with him, as long as you were his wife, you were protected. He would never hurt someone he loved. He threw me out into the rain like I was nothing, like our entire marriage was nothing. Anna's voice was bitter, edged with betrayal that now extended to her closest friend. Rebecca nodded slowly. "Because you found out the truth, or part of it anyway. Daniel Mitchell is not just some businessman with shady connections. He's the head of one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the East Coast. His real name is not even Daniel Mitchell. That's an identity he created 15 years ago when he decided to build a legitimate front for his operations." The words hung in the air, impossible and undeniable. Anna sank onto the bed, her legs unable to support her any longer. "What are you saying? That my husband is... what? A crime boss? Like in the movies?" "Not like in the movies. In real life, real operations, real money, real consequences. He controls half the shipping that comes through Chicago's ports. He has connections in city government, in law enforcement, in places that would make your head spin. The man you married is one of the most powerful and feared individuals in this city, and nobody knows his face. That's how he's survived this long." Anna thought she might be sick. All those quiet evenings at home, all those tender moments, all those whispered promises in the dark. Had any of it been real? Or had she been nothing more than another piece of his carefully constructed facade, a prop in the elaborate performance of normalcy he presented to the world? "Why me?" she whispered. "Why did he marry me?" Rebecca sat down beside her, taking her hands. "I've been trying to figure that out. From everything I've uncovered, Daniel doesn't do anything without a reason. Every move he makes is calculated, strategic. But when it comes to you, I think you might be the one thing in his life that wasn't part of a plan. I think he actually fell in love with you. Then why did he throw me away? Because you saw behind the curtain, because you became a liability instead of an asset. Men like Daniel, they operate on cold logic. The moment you knew his secret, you became a threat. The fact that he let you walk away alive tells me there's something else going on, some part of this puzzle we're not seeing yet." Anna pulled her hands free and stood up, moving to the window. The parking lot below was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered across the faded asphalt. Normal cars, belonging to normal people with normal lives. She had never felt further from that world. "What am I supposed to do now? Go to the police? Would they even believe? Me?" Rebecca joined her at the window. "The police are complicated. Daniel has people everywhere. I don't know who we can trust and who might be on his payroll, but I have contacts, people who've been trying to bring him down for years. If you're willing to help, if you're willing to tell them what you know, we might finally be able to—" She stopped mid-sentence, her body going rigid. Anna followed her gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. A black SUV had pulled into the parking lot, sleek and expensive, completely out of place in this rundown neighborhood. The windows were tinted so dark that it was impossible to see inside, but Anna knew with absolute certainty who it belonged to. "We need to go," Rebecca said, grabbing Anna's arm. "Now, right now." They did not make it to the door. It swung open before they could reach it, revealing 2 men in dark suits with faces that showed no emotion whatsoever. Behind them, framed in the doorway like a figure from a nightmare, stood someone Anna had never seen before. He was older than Daniel, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, and when they settled on Anna, she felt as if she were being examined by something ancient and predatory. He wore his power like other men wore cologne, an invisible aura that filled the room and made the air feel thick and heavy. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, and his voice was silk-wrapped. Around Steele. We need to talk about your husband. Anna's throat constricted. This was not Daniel's people. The recognition was instinctive, primal. This was someone else, someone whose presence spoke of different dangers and different agendas. She had escaped one trap only to fall into another. The older man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. My name is Victor Marchetti, and I'm afraid you've stumbled into something much larger than a failed marriage. Victor Marchetti settled into the rooms-only chair as if he owned it, as if he owned the entire motel and everything in it. His two men remained by the door, hands folded in front of them, eyes scanning constantly for threats that probably did not exist. Anna and Rebecca stood by the window, united in their fear, watching the scene unfold like spectators at their own disaster. Please sit, Victor said, gesturing to the bed. I assure you, if I meant you harm, we would not be having this conversation. Anna did not move. Who are you? What do you want? Victor's pale eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. I am someone who has been watching Daniel Mitchell for a very long time, someone who has a vested interest in seeing his empire crumble, and you, Mrs. Mitchell, have just become the most valuable piece on the board. I don't know anything. I found some files on his computer, that's all. I don't even know what half of it meant. But you saw it. You were inside his home, inside his life, for 3 years. You know things you don't even realize you know. The way he moves, the way he thinks, the people he trusts, that information is priceless to someone like me. Rebecca stepped forward, her journalist's instincts overriding her fear. Victor Marchetti, I know that name. You're the head of the Marchetti family. You and Daniel are rivals. Victor inclined his head in acknowledgement. Rival is a strong word. We occupy overlapping territories. For years there has been an uneasy peace between our organizations, but recently Daniel has been making moves that threaten to upset the balance, moves that cannot be allowed to continue. Anna felt sick. She had escaped one criminal only to be captured by another. The world she had stumbled into was not a world of good and evil, but a world of competing evils, each using human beings as pawns in games she could not begin to understand. What do you want from me? She asked again. Victor leaned forward, his expression almost paternal in its false warmth. I want to help you, Mrs. Mitchell. Daniel will not let you go easily. You've seen too much, know too much. Right now he's probably trying to decide whether it's safer to bring you back into the fold or eliminate you entirely. I can offer you protection. I can offer you a new life, far from Chicago, far from anything that might remind you of the man you married. In exchange for what? Information. Everything you remember about Daniel's operations, his contacts, his plans. You help. Me and I make sure you disappear so completely that even Daniel Mitchell won't be able to find you. It was a devil's bargain, and Anna knew it. Trading one form of captivity for another, selling whatever scraps of knowledge she possessed to a man who was cut from the same cloth as her husband. But what choice did she have? She was alone, frightened, and completely out of her depth. Maybe this was the only way to survive. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her heart stop. A text message from an unknown number, just 4 words. Don't trust him, run. Victor saw her expression change and held out his hand. The phone, please. Anna's mind raced. Someone was trying to warn her. Someone who knew where she was, who knew about Victor, who wanted her to escape. But who? And how? The phone, Mrs. Mitchell. Now. She handed it over, watching as Victor read the message. His expression flickered, just for a moment, before the mask of calm settled back into place. It seems we have an interested third party. How fascinating. He pocketed the phone and stood up. I had hoped we could do this the civilized way, but clearly time is running out. You'll come with us now, Mrs. Mitchell, for your own protection, of course. No. The word came out stronger than Anna expected. I'm not going anywhere with you. Victor's smile never wavered. I'm afraid that's not an option. The next few seconds happened in a blur. The door burst open, not from the Outside, but from the adjacent room, men poured through, moving with military precision, and before Anna could process what was happening, Victor's guards were on the floor, and Victor himself was being restrained by hands that showed no hesitation. Through the chaos, Anna caught a glimpse of the man leading the assault, tall, dark-haired, familiar. The stranger from the diner the night before. He moved through the violence with a grace that spoke of extensive training, his face calm and focused, as he neutralized the threat with brutal efficiency. When it was over, when the Marchetti men were secured and Victor was being led away, the stranger turned to Anna. Up close, she could see the intensity in his eyes, the weight of secrets that lurked behind them. He was handsome in a severe way, all sharp angles and controlled power. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, "my name is Marcus Cole. I work for your husband, and I'm here to take you home." Anna felt the world tilt again. Home. The word sounded absurd, meaningless. She had no home anymore. She had nothing but questions and fear, and a growing certainty that her life had become a chessboard where she was the only piece that did not understand the rules. "I don't want to go back to Daniel." Marcus nodded as if he had expected this response. "I understand. But there are things you need to know, Mrs. Mitchell. Things about your husband that might change your mind. He's not who you think he is. None of this is what you think it is." "Then, tell me the truth." Marcus glanced around the room at the unconscious men, at the chaos of the confrontation. "Not here, not now. But I promise you, if you come with me, you'll get the answers you're looking for, every single one of them." Anna looked at Rebecca, who nodded slowly. "I'll come with you," her friend said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." It was not much, but it was enough. Anna turned back to Marcus and took a deep breath. "Okay, take me to him. Take me to Daniel. But if he lies to me again, if any of this is another manipulation, I swear I will find a way to burn his entire world to the ground." Marcus's lips curved in what might have been respect. "Understood, Mrs. Mitchell. Shall we?" They left the motel together, stepping out into a morning that had finally begun to clear. The clouds were breaking apart, letting through shafts of pale sunlight that felt like a promise, or perhaps a warning. Anna did not know what awaited her. She did not know if she was walking toward salvation or destruction, but she knew with a certainty that settled into her bones that her life would never be the same again. The woman who had stood in the rain, tearing up her marriage certificate, was gone. In her place was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had stared into the darkness and refused to look away. The story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. If this moment, this turning point in Anna's journey, has touched something in your heart, pause right now and leave a comment with the words, "I believe in second chances." It will mean more than you know to see those words, to know that we share this moment together. The house that Marcus drove them to was not the home Anna had shared with Daniel. It was a different property entirely, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city that she had never even known existed. High walls surrounded the grounds, topped with security cameras that tracked their approach like mechanical eyes. Armed guards stood at the gate, stepping aside only after Marcus showed his credentials through the car window. Anna watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. This was her husband's world, the world he had hidden from her for 3 years. How many other properties did he own? How many other lives did he lead, each one completely separate from the man who had held her at night and called her his wife? The car pulled up to the main house, a structure of stone and glass that seemed to have grown organically from the surrounding landscape. It was beautiful in a cold, imposing way, all clean lines and sharp angles, utterly unlike the warm, traditional home where their marriage had taken place. This was a fortress masquerading as a mansion, a place designed for protection rather than comfort. Marcus led them inside, through a foyer that echoed with their footsteps, past rooms filled with art and antiques that looked like they belonged in a museum. Rebecca stayed close to Anna's side, her hand occasionally brushing against Anna's in silent support. They were both strangers here, both navigating territory that felt alien and dangerous. Finally, they reached a set of double doors at the end of a long hallway. Marcus paused, turning to face Anna. "He's inside. He's been waiting for you since last night. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever anger or fear or confusion, I ask only that you give him a chance to explain." "Why should I?" "Because the man in that room is not the man you think you married. He's someone else entirely, and when you understand the truth, I believe you'll see everything differently." Anna wanted to argue, wanted to demand more answers before facing her husband again. But something in Marcus's eyes stopped her. There was no deception there, no manipulation, just a quiet conviction that what he said was true. She pushed open the doors and stepped inside. Daniel stood by the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the morning light. He turned when he heard her enter, and for a moment they just looked at each other across the expanse of the room. He looked tired, Anna realized, tired and worried, and unless she was imagining it, afraid. "Anna." Her name fell from his lips like a prayer. "I'm sorry. For everything." "Sorry?" The word came out sharp, edged with all the pain and betrayal of the past 24 hours. "You threw me out of my own home. You let me believe our entire marriage was a lie. And now you send your men to rescue me from another criminal, like I'm some kind of prize to be fought over. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it, Daniel." He flinched at the accusation, but he did not deny it. I know I've handled this badly. I've been trying to protect you, but I've only pushed you further into danger. That's the last thing I ever wanted." "Protect me from what? From whom?" "Victor Marchetti said you two are rivals, that you've been making moves to upset some kind of balance. What does any of that have to do with me?" Daniel moved away from the window, approaching her slowly as if she were a wounded animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. "Victor Marchetti has wanted to destroy me for 15 years. Everything I've built, everything I've achieved, he sees it as a threat to his own power. When he found out about you, about our marriage, he saw an opportunity, a weakness he could exploit." "So I'm a weakness now?" "No." Daniel's voice cracked on the word. "You're the only real thing in my life. The only thing that matters more than the empire I've spent decades constructing. That's why I tried to keep you separate, to build a wall between my work and our marriage. I thought if you never knew, you'd be safe. I thought ignorance would protect you." Anna felt tears threatening, but she refused to let them fall. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning. I deserved to know who I was marrying." "Would you have married me if you knew?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Anna thought about the man she had fallen in love with, the gentle soul who had courted her with patience and kindness, who had made her feel safe and cherished in a world that had often felt cold and indifferent. Would she have walked away if she had known the darkness that lurked beneath the surface? She honestly did not know. "There's more," Daniel said, and his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "Something I should have told you a long time ago. Something that might help you understand why I am the way I am." He led her to a sofa, gesturing for her to sit. Rebecca remained by the door, a silent sentinel, but her presence was comforting. Whatever came next, Anna was not alone. Daniel sat across from her, his hands clasped in front of him. "When I was 17, my father was killed. We weren't wealthy then, just an ordinary family in Brooklyn. My father worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, and my mother took in sewing to help make ends meet. But someone decided that our neighborhood was worth more than the people living in it. Developers, politicians, criminals, all working together to force out the families who had been there for generations." Anna listened, her anger slowly giving way to something else. Pain, understanding, a glimpse into a history she had never known. "My father tried to organize the neighbors, tried to fight back through legal channels. He went to meetings, wrote letters, contacted the press, and for his trouble he was shot outside our front door. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but I knew better. Everyone knew better." Daniel's eyes were distant, lost in memories that clearly still haunted him. "I swore that day that I would never be powerless again. I would never be at the mercy of men who saw people like my family as obstacles to be removed. So I built an empire of my own, not to hurt innocent people, but to protect them, to make sure that what happened to my father could never happen to anyone else. That doesn't justify breaking the law. That doesn't justify lying to me for 3 years. No, it doesn't. Nothing can justify that. But I need you to understand that I'm not the monster Victor Marchetti wants you to believe I am. The operations I run, they're not about hurting people. They're about creating systems of protection in places where the law has failed. They're about making sure that the powerful can't simply crush the powerless without consequence. Anna wanted to dismiss his words as rationalizations, as the self-serving excuses of a man who had chosen crime over conscience. But something in his voice, something in the pain that flickered across his face, made her hesitate. What if he was telling the truth? What if the world she had stumbled into was more complicated than simple good and evil? Even if I believe you, she said slowly, that doesn't change what's happened between us. You kicked me out of our home. You treated me like a threat instead of your wife. Daniel reached for her hand, then stopped himself. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that up to you if you'll let me. But right now, there's something more important. Victor Marchetti is not going to stop. He's going to use you to get to me one way or another. The only way I can keep you safe is if we face this together. Together? Anna laughed, but there was no humor in it. We can't even have an honest conversation without lies and secrets getting in the way. Then let's change that. Starting now. Ask me anything, Anna, anything at all, and I swear on my father's memory I will tell you the truth. It was an extraordinary offer, one that carried weight beyond mere words. Anna looked into her husband's eyes, searching for deception and finding only desperate sincerity. He meant it. After all this time, all these secrets, he was finally ready to let her see the real him. She took a deep breath. Everything. I want to know everything. And then we'll decide together what happens next. Daniel nodded, and for the first time since she had walked into this room, something like hope flickered across his features. Everything, he agreed, starting from the beginning. The hours that followed were unlike anything Anna had experienced in her 3 years of marriage. Daniel talked and she listened, and slowly the picture of who he really was began to take shape. He told her about the organization he led, about its structure and its purpose. He explained how he had built it from nothing, turning the anger and grief of a 17-year-old boy into a network that spanned the entire East Coast. He told her about the people he protected, the communities that had been abandoned by law enforcement and left to fend for themselves. He described the shelters he funded, the businesses he supported, the families he had helped escape situations that no one else would touch. He was not a saint, he made that clear. He had done things that haunted him, things that could never be undone. But he had also done good, real and tangible good, in places where goodness had long since been forgotten. Anna absorbed it all, trying to reconcile this complex, contradictory man with the simple husband she thought she had married. It was not easy. Every new piece of information raised more questions, more doubts, more fears. But it also brought a strange kind of clarity. The man she loved was not a figment of her imagination. He was real, buried beneath layers of protection and necessity, waiting to be found. When Daniel finished talking, when the truth had finally been laid bare between them, Anna sat in silence for a long moment. Rebecca had left to give them privacy, and the room felt both vast and intimate, a space where secrets could be spoken without fear of judgment. I don't know if I can forgive you, Anna said at last. I don't know if I can ever trust you completely. Not after everything. That's happened. Daniel nodded, accepting her words without argument. I understand. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth, whatever you decide to do with it. But, Anna continued, I also don't know if I can walk away. Not now. Not when I finally see you clearly. We built something together, Daniel, even if it was built on a foundation of lies. Maybe it's possible to rebuild it on something stronger. Hope and caution warred in Daniel's expression. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need time. Time to process, time to decide, time to figure out who I am in this new reality. But I'm also saying that I'm not ready to give up on us. Not yet." It was not the declaration of love that Daniel had perhaps hoped for, but it was enough. It was a starting point, a crack in the wall that might eventually become a door. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "Whatever you need," he said. "Whatever. Time, whatever space. I will wait. I have been waiting my whole life for someone like you, Anna. I can wait a little longer." The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Marcus entered, his expression tense. "Sir, we have a situation. Victor Marchetti has escaped custody. He's gone to ground, and our sources say he's planning something big, something that involves both of you." Daniel was on his feet instantly, the tender husband vanishing into the hardened leader. "What do we know? Not much yet, but there's chatter about a meeting tonight, a gathering of people who want to see you fall. Marchetti is calling in every favor he has, trying to build a coalition against us." Anna stood as well, her mind racing. "What does this mean? What happens now?" Daniel turned to her, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to protect her, to shelter her from the storm that was coming, but he also recognized that she had earned the right to face it alongside him. "It means we fight," he said, "and this time we fight together." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The estate transformed into a command center, with maps spread across tables and phones ringing constantly. Anna found herself drawn into the preparations, her background as a nurse suddenly useful in ways she had never anticipated. She helped organize medical supplies, worked with the staff to prepare contingency plans, and generally made herself useful wherever she could. It felt strange, being part of this world that had existed alongside her ordinary life without her knowledge. But it also felt right, in a way she could not fully explain. She was no longer a passive observer, no longer a victim of circumstances beyond her control. She was an active participant in her own story, and there was a power in that realization. As night fell, the tension in the estate reached a breaking point. Reports came in that Marchetti's forces were moving, gathering at a location downtown. Daniel, prepared to lead a team to intercept them, to prevent whatever strike they were planning before it could be launched. Anna found him in the foyer, dressed in dark clothes that made him look like a stranger. But when he looked at her, his eyes held all the love and vulnerability that she had come to know in their years together. He was still her husband, beneath everything. He was still the man she had married. "I need you to stay here," he said. "Marcus will protect you. If anything goes wrong, I want to be there with you. Anna, please, this is not something you should witness. These people, they're dangerous in ways you can't imagine." She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest. "I know. I've spent the last 24 hours learning exactly how dangerous this world is. But I'm not going to hide in a safe room while you risk your life. We said we would face this together. I meant it." Daniel looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. He sighed, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. "You are the most stubborn, infuriating, remarkable woman I have ever known. And you love me for it. More than you will ever know." He kissed her then, soft and desperate, a promise wrapped in a farewell. When they pulled apart, there were tears in both their eyes, but neither of them acknowledged them. "Stay close to me," Daniel said. "No matter what happens, stay close. Always." They left the estate together, heading into the darkness that awaited them. And somewhere in that darkness, Victor Marchetti was waiting, planning, preparing to bring their world crashing down around them. The warehouse district on the south side of Chicago lay silent under the night sky, its buildings standing like tombstones in a cemetery of abandoned industry. Once these structures had hummed with activity, workers loading and unloading cargo from ships that traveled the world. Now they stood empty, victims of economic forces that had rendered them obsolete. It was here, in this graveyard of broken dreams, that Victor Marchetti had chosen to make his stand. Anna sat beside Daniel in the back of an armored vehicle, surrounded by men who moved with the easy competence of soldiers. She had insisted on coming, and Daniel had reluctantly agreed, knowing that trying to stop her would only waste precious time. But he had positioned her at the rear of the operation, far from the front lines, with explicit orders to stay in the vehicle unless absolutely necessary. She had agreed to these conditions, understanding that her presence was already a compromise on his part. She was not trained for combat, not prepared for the violence that might be required. But she was here, and that was what mattered. The vehicle stopped a block away from the target warehouse. Through the tinted windows, Anna could see figures moving in the shadows, silhouettes against the faint light that spilled from inside the building. Marchetti's men preparing for a confrontation that they did not yet know was coming. Daniel turned to her, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard lights. "I need you to promise me something. If anything goes wrong, if this turns into something we can't control, you get out. You take this vehicle and you drive until you can't drive anymore. Do you understand?" "I understand." Anna took his hand, holding it tightly. "But I'm not leaving you." "Anna, I'm not leaving you." Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. "Whatever happens in there, we face it together. That's what you said, that's what we agreed." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to read. Then he nodded, accepting her decision. "Together," he repeated. "Okay. Together." He leaned forward and kissed her, hard and quick, then turned and exited the vehicle. Anna watched through the window as he joined his men, gave final instructions, and began the approach. To the warehouse, the figures moved like shadows themselves, blending into the darkness with practiced ease. Minutes passed. Each second felt like an hour. Anna kept her eyes fixed on the warehouse, watching for any sign of what was happening inside. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and the occasional crackle of radio static. Then, suddenly, light exploded from the warehouse windows. Not the light of fire or explosion, but the harsh, artificial light of floodlights snapping on all at once. Anna heard shouts, the sounds of struggle, and her heart stopped beating in her chest. She was out of the vehicle before she could think, running toward the warehouse with no thought for her own safety. Someone tried to stop her, one of Daniel's men stationed nearby, but she pushed past him with strength she did not know she possessed. All she could think about was Daniel. Daniel in danger. Daniel needing her. She burst through a side door and stopped, frozen, by the scene that confronted her. The warehouse was filled with people, dozens of them, standing in a rough circle around a central clearing. In that clearing stood Daniel and Victor Marchetti, facing each other like gladiators in an arena. Both men were bloodied, their clothes torn and disheveled, but both were still standing. Around them, the battle had apparently ended. Marchetti's men were on their knees, disarmed and defeated, watched over by Daniel's forces. It was over, or nearly over. Whatever violence had occurred, Daniel's side had won. But Victor Marchetti was not done. He stood with his hands raised, a mocking smile on his battered face. "You think this changes anything? You think defeating me tonight ends this war? There will be others, Daniel. There will always be others. As long as you have something to lose, you'll never be safe." His eyes found Anna across the room, and his smile widened. "Especially now that everyone knows your weakness." Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "She is not a weakness, she is my strength, and anyone who threatens her will answer to me personally." Brave words, but words don't stop men like me. Power does, and power can always be taken away. "Then take it." Daniel spread his arms, inviting attack. "Right here, right now, just you and me, no armies, no allies, just two men settling a score. That's what you want, isn't it? That's what this has always been about." Marchetti's smile faltered. For all his bravado, he was an old man facing a younger, stronger opponent. The advantage he had sought through numbers and surprise had evaporated, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. "I didn't think so." Daniel turned his back on his rival, a gesture of contempt that spoke louder than words. "Take him away, this is over." But Anna saw what Daniel did not. She saw Marchetti's hand move toward his pocket, saw the flash of metal as he drew a small weapon he had somehow concealed. Without thinking, she screamed a warning, her voice cutting through the silence of the warehouse. "Daniel!" He spun, reacting with instincts honed by years of living in danger. But he was not fast enough. The shot rang out, echoing off the metal walls, and Anna felt something tear through her body like fire. She looked down, confused, and saw blood spreading across her shirt. The world tilted, sounds becoming distant and muffled. She was falling, she realized, falling toward the cold concrete floor of the warehouse. Hands caught her before she landed. Daniel's hands, strong and trembling, cradling her against his chest. She could hear him speaking, shouting orders, calling her name. But the words seemed to come from very far away. "Anna. Anna, stay with me. Look at me. Don't close your eyes." She tried to obey, tried to focus on his face above her. He looked terrified, more frightened than she had ever seen him. The powerful crime lord, the man who controlled an empire, was crying, tears streaming down his face. As he pressed his hands against her wound, "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have stayed in the car." "Don't talk. Save your strength. Help is coming. Just hold on." She wanted to tell him that she loved him, that she forgave him, that the past day had shown her who he really was and she had finally accepted it. But the darkness was closing in, pulling her under, and she could not find the words. The last thing she saw before the world went black was Daniel's face, twisted with grief and determination. The last thing she heard was his voice, promising that everything would be okay, promising that he would never let her go. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of sirens, growing closer, bringing help that might arrive too late. Light, white and pure, surrounding her, filling her. For a moment Anna thought she had died, that this was whatever came next. But then the light resolved into a ceiling, institutional white, marked with the distinctive tiles of a hospital room. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the brightness. Her body felt heavy, weighted down by something she could not identify. When she tried to move, pain flared in her side, sharp and immediate, and she gasped. "Don't try to move." The voice was Daniel's, rough with exhaustion and relief. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand, looking like he had not slept in days. "You're safe. You're in the hospital. Everything is okay." "What happened?" Her voice came out as a croak, her throat dry and scratchy. "You saved my life." Daniel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That man Marchetti, he would have shot me. You warned me just in time. But you stepped into the path of the shot. You took it meant for me." Memory flooded back. The warehouse, the confrontation, the flash of the hidden weapon and the burning impact that had sent her falling to the floor. She had thrown herself forward without thinking, her body moving before her mind could catch up. "I thought I was going to lose you." Daniel's voice cracked on the words. "I thought I had finally lost the only thing that ever mattered to me. You can't get rid of me that easily." She tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. "How long have I been here?" 3 days. The surgery was complicated, but the doctors say you're going to make a full recovery. It will take time, but you're strong, Anna. Stronger than anyone I've ever known." 3 days. She had been unconscious for 3 days while her body fought to heal. And Daniel had been here, she knew instinctively. He had not left her side. "Marchetti?" she asked. Daniel's expression hardened. "In custody, charged with attempted murder, among other things. He won't hurt anyone again." There was more to the story she could tell. Things that had happened while she was unconscious, consequences that had unfolded from that night in the warehouse. But she was too tired to ask, and somehow she knew that whatever had occurred, Daniel had handled it. He had protected her, protected their future, just as he had promised. "I need to tell you something," she said, gathering her strength. "Before everything happened, before I got shot, I was going to tell you something important. You don't have to—" "I forgive you." The words came out simple and direct, carrying the weight of everything she had learned in the past few days. I understand why you did what you did. I don't agree with all of it, and I'm still hurt by the lies. But I understand, and I choose to, and move forward, with you, if you still want that. Daniel brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. I want that more than anything. I will spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice. You better. She smiled, and this time it was genuine, because I'm not going anywhere. They stayed like that for a while, hand in hand, letting the silence speak for them. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A new day was ending, and a new chapter of their lives was beginning. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges to face, obstacles to overcome, a world of complexity and danger that would always be part of their lives. But they would face it together, as partners, as equals. The lies and secrets of the past had been exposed, and in their place was something stronger, a foundation of truth and understanding that could weather any storm. Anna closed her eyes, exhaustion finally, claiming her. But for the first time in days, the darkness felt peaceful rather than threatening. She was safe, she was loved, and whatever tomorrow might bring, she was ready to face it. Recovery was slow and sometimes frustrating. Anna spent 2 more weeks in the hospital, gradually regaining her strength under the watchful eyes of doctors who treated her like fragile glass. Daniel rarely left her side, working remotely when necessary and delegating everything else to Marcus and the rest of his organization. Their relationship changed during those weeks. The dynamic shifted from the unequal footing of secret keeper and unknowing spouse to something more balanced, more honest. Daniel answered her questions with candor, no longer hiding behind the protective barriers he had constructed. Anna listened, challenged, disagreed, and eventually accepted the complex reality of the man she had married. It was not perfect. There were difficult conversations, moments of anger and doubt, times when Anna wondered if she was foolish to stay. But there were also moments of profound connection, of laughter and tenderness that reminded her why she had fallen in love with Daniel in the first place. By the time she was released from the hospital, something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer 2 people trapped in a marriage built on deception. They were partners, choosing each day to build something new together. Daniel took her to a new home, a house far from the city. That felt nothing like either of their previous residences. It was warm and welcoming, with large windows that let in natural light and a garden that exploded with color. A place for fresh starts, he explained, a place where they could build the life they should have had from the beginning. Rebecca came to visit, full of questions and journalistic curiosity. She had written a series of articles about Victor Marchetti's arrest and the corruption his organization had enabled, carefully omitting any details that might connect Daniel to the story. It was a delicate balance, protecting her friend while pursuing the truth, and Anna admired her ability to walk that line. You know I'll always want answers, Rebecca said during one of her visits. I'll never stop digging into these things. I know, Anna replied, and I hope you find them. Just maybe not the answers that involve my husband. That's fair, Rebecca smiled. For now, at least. Life settled into a new rhythm. Anna went back to nursing, working at a clinic Daniel funded in one of the city's underserved neighborhoods. It was work that mattered, work that connected her to the communities her husband had sworn to protect. She saw firsthand the good that his organization could do, the lives it touched, the hope it provided in places where hope was scarce. She also saw the costs, the guards who stood watch outside their home, the precautions that had to be taken every time they went somewhere public, the knowledge that danger could never be entirely eliminated, only managed. But she had made her choice with open eyes, and she did not regret it. 6 months after the night in the warehouse, Daniel took her to the place where they had first met. A coffee shop downtown, unremarkable except for the memories it held. They sat at the same table where they had shared their first conversation, and Daniel took her hands in his. I have something for you, he said. something I should have given you a long time ago." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a ring box. But when he opened it, Anna did not see a new piece of jewelry. She saw her wedding ring, the one she had left behind when she fled their home in the rain. "I found this on the bathroom counter that night, after you left. I've been carrying it with me ever since, waiting for the day when I could give it back to you, when I earned the right to give it back." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, I know a ring is just a symbol. I know our marriage was flawed from the start. But I also know that I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. And if you'll let me, I want to start over. Not the marriage we had, but a new one, a real one, built on everything we've learned, everything we've survived." She took the ring from the box, turning it over in her fingers. Such a small thing to carry so much meaning. But meaning was what we gave to things, she realized. And she was ready to give this ring a new meaning. She slipped it onto her finger, watching it catch the light. "Yes," she said softly. "Let's start over." Daniel's face broke into a smile that transformed him, erasing the lines of worry and stress that had marked him for so long. He looked young again, full of hope and possibility, the way he must have looked before the weight of his world had settled on his shoulders. They kissed, gentle and unhurried, sealing a promise that was older than words. Around them, the coffee shop continued its everyday bustle, completely unaware of the private miracle taking place at the corner table. Outside, the sun was shining. The rain that had driven Anna from her home all those months ago seemed like a distant memory, replaced by warmth and light. A new chapter was beginning, written by two people who had chosen each other despite everything that stood between them. Anna Mitchell had torn up her marriage certificate on a rainy night in Chicago, certain that her life was over. But she had been wrong. It was just beginning. And this time she knew exactly who she was married to. She knew his secrets, his sins, his shadows, and she loved him anyway. That was the miracle in the end. Not that perfect people could find happiness, but that imperfect people could choose each other and build something beautiful from the wreckage of their mistakes. Anna and Daniel had built something beautiful, and they would spend the rest of their lives protecting it. The garden was full of light on the afternoon of their renewal ceremony. Friends and family gathered on white chairs beneath a canopy of flowers, watching as Anna and Daniel stood together at the altar they had built in the backyard of their new home. This time, there were no secrets. This time, every person present knew exactly who they were celebrating. The guest list was small and carefully curated, including only those who had earned their trust through years of loyalty and discretion. Rebecca stood as Anna's maid of honor, beaming with happiness for her friend. Marcus served as Daniel's best man, his usually stern face softened by the emotion of the moment. The ceremony was simple and sincere. They wrote their own vows, promises that acknowledged the journey they had taken to reach this moment. Anna spoke of forgiveness and growth, of learning to love someone completely, shadows and all. Daniel spoke of redemption and gratitude, of finding a partner who challenged him to be better than he had ever believed he could be. When they exchanged rings, it was not the first time they had made these promises, but it was the first time they made them with complete honesty, with full knowledge of what they were pledging and why. The party afterward lasted until well past midnight. There was dancing and laughter, and stories shared among friends who had become family. Anna moved through the celebration feeling lighter than she had in years, buoyed by the love that surrounded her. At one point, she found herself standing alone, at the edge of the garden looking up at the stars. So much had changed since that rainy night when she had torn up her marriage certificate and walked away from everything she knew. She had been reborn in the storm, emerging as someone stronger, more resilient, more herself than she had ever been before. Daniel found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about? How far we've come. How different everything is. How happy I am." He pressed a kiss to her. "Temple, I was thinking the same thing. I never imagined this was possible, Anna. I never thought I would deserve this much happiness." "You deserve it." She turned in his arms, facing him. We both deserve it. We fought for it. We earned it. Yes. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that was reserved only for her. We did. They stood together in the darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds. The world beyond their garden was still complicated, still dangerous, still full of challenges that would test them. But they would face those challenges together, as they faced everything now. Anna had learned that love was not the absence of difficulty. It was the presence of commitment in the face of difficulty. It was choosing someone again and again, even when the choice was hard. It was building something together, brick by brick, day by day, until what you had created was stronger than anything that tried to tear it down. She and Daniel had built something strong, something real, something that would last. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the small dramas of human existence. But to Anna, standing in her husband's arms on this perfect night, they seemed to be blessing them, wishing them well on the next chapter of their journey together. If you have watched this far, it is because you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, "I have watched this far, so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel." And if this story touched your heart, if you felt something real while watching Anna and Daniel find their way back to each other, please take a moment to leave a like and share it with someone who might need a reminder that love can survive anything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in stories that show us the best and worst of who we are and remind us that redemption is always possible. Until next time. Anna looked at the stars one more time, then turned back to the party, to the life she had chosen, to the future that waited with open arms. The rain was a distant memory. The sun was rising on a new day, and she was exactly where she was meant to be, home.